Welcome, everybody. Just a quick introduction here and get things kicked off. My name is Kevin Yankee. I'm the chair of the interest groups and proud to welcome you to our third session of the AI-themed interest group sessions. This one will be focused on instructional technology and brought to you by Cecile from Northwestern University. And before we kick off, you may have seen the opening slide. Just wanted to do a quick plug to make sure everyone is aware that our annual conference will be coming up at Iowa State University, hosted by Mike Peterson and his amazing staff. That will be October 1st through 4th, 2024. And we have an open call for proposals happening right now through April 3rd. So I think that's all I've got for you. Cecile, if you're ready to go, I will let you take it away.
Okay, I probably should have unmuted. Welcome everyone to the Instructional Design Interest Group presentation about the impact of generative AI on instructional design. So we have just a brief agenda. Actually, it's not that brief, but this is what we're going to be doing. I'm not going to go too in depth since we have a lot to cover and only an hour. And I know we want to get to the student panel at the end. So first off, I will set the stage. ChatGPT 3.5 was released in November 2022, and academia took notice. We see all of these articles that came out in late 2022, early 2023. AI has been around for a while, though, so why the big crisis for academia? And the answer to that is that ChatGPT is generative AI. So, what is generative AI? So, this is just a refresher. It's an artificial intelligence model that learns from training, when that training is teaching pattern recognition based on large amounts of data to make decisions. So, and then generating new content that resembles the original data. So, so what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a generative AI that uses large language models. And so that generates new text by making statistical predictions about what should come next based on its training data. So it mimics language. And so that's what had academics very scared because, yeah. But anyway, so ChatGPT is not alone, though. I'm mainly going to be covering ChatGPT in my sections because it's kind of the de facto text-based thing that people refer to, like Kleenex or Google. It is what they will use. So, but there's lots of different types of generative AI. Other language ones are Bard, Bing, or Claude. Images, you would maybe use Wally or sorry, Dolly or Midjourney. And then for videos, Runway or recently unveiled Sora from OpenAI, which is the company that makes ChatGPT. But in 2022, ChatGPT 3.5 did not have context other than the language learning pattern. So this is really important to note because, and I really like Pokemon, so this is what I'm actually, no, I like Pokemon Go, but this is my example that I like to use. If you ask ChatGPT to generate a poem about a blue Pokemon, it's finding instances in its data where blue is used to describe Pokemon. It's not going to a database where Pokemon has a field that indicates the color and generating using facts. It's using just the language models that that it has to its available to it. So, what were the pedagogical fears about ChatGPT? Now that we have a generative AI that's creating realistic language that doesn't sound like a machine. So there were these threats. So there was possibly the threat to academic integrity. Students are going to cheat. They're going to ask ChatGPT to do their homework for them and write their essays for them. There's also the threat to learning objectives. So the students will not learn analytical or critical thinking if they are using ChatGPT because they're not doing their writing themselves, or the students will not develop their own writing skills. And then also another threat was the authority of the faculty member, because the students will rely on ChatGPT and just believe that it is fact. thus limiting what the faculty member is bringing to the table. And also the bias and limited data in the large language models, it can very much exclude other knowledge that the faculty member would have. So I just want to show this slide, and this is taken from Educause. They posted it last week, and so they're calling generative AI digital transformation 2.0. So it's a disruptive tool, just like the graphic calculator, YouTube videos, Wikipedia, Google Translate were. And I like this graphic because it also mentions culture and workforce here. So intentional shifts in technology plus culture plus workforce equals digital transformation. And so generative AI requires a culture shift in all of these categories where faculty and instructional designers can't just adapt, but it means that we have to change the way we do things. And we actually just went through a similar change with the pandemic, with having to adapt learning objectives and everything like that for remote teaching. So we're all very familiar with this kind of stuff. Um, so what considerations are there for instructional designers or faculty? So there's a lot of things, but mainly it's how faculty assess, how they interact with their students via assignments, transparency, communication, and feedback, policies, um, access and equity for the students. What will happen when things like ChatGPT are behind a paywall? And then what and why do faculty and students need to learn about generative AI? Because the faculty need to convey things to the students, but they also need training. So these were all of the not all. This is not an exhaustive list of things that we were considering as instructional designers. But one thing to really note is that detection technology is not really effective. And this is why faculty have to embrace the change. So they are reevaluating the learning goals for each of the classes that they're teaching, but also their discipline as a whole. And so what literacies will the students need to be employable, and what is crucial for these students to be successful versus what has been the norm? So, yeah, so instructional designers have to be on top of the technology in order to train the faculty, in order for the faculty to convey all of the tools, limitations, and how to use it effectively. So, moving right along. So, what should we focus on when teaching how to use generative AI? And so, this is just what I believe. and whenever I have conversations with other instructional technologists, and designers, this is kind of like what we've settled on, but how to use GAI responsibly, how to be transparent about our own usage, how we want to communicate what we want generative AI to do, but also encourage the joy and learning of the subject matter. So we're changing that culture of the student. So it's less about the grade and more about the learning and what they're going to take away. And then obviously the limitations of the tool. I have a little soapbox statement, but so we can't really hide from the tool. We can't shelter people from it or pretend like it doesn't exist because we are also using it. And when they graduate, they will also be exposed to it. So to not address it is to not be doing our jobs. And the usage of generative AI varies by discipline and by learning objectives. So there's a lot of different ways to use it. And so we as instructional designers can only really talk about it in terms of how to make it work for teachers and students and how to use it for good. And then, so the limitations of ChatGPT, this is the big thing that we should talk about. And it's three main things. So hallucinations, content, and bias. I'm not really going to talk that much about bias because the next session is all about bias. But hallucinations, basically because the data that ChatGPT is using is language. it's not necessarily giving out facts. An example I like to give is a faculty member asked ChatGPT to generate a bibliography for a certain topic, and it spat out a very believable list of articles by people who exist and are colleagues of that professor. But the catch was those people had never written those articles, even though they very easily could have. So um, it hallucinates things that aren't real. And so if students and faculty aren't aware of that, they will just take that as fact, say, yes, this is a great response. And then the AI is then learning that is correct. So hallucinations is one big limitation. And then content. So as I mentioned, so actually, I don't think I did mention this, but ChatGPT 3.5 only had a data set up to April 2021, and then later on it was moved to January 2022. And so if somebody had asked it to talk about maybe Taylor Swift, it would never mention Travis Kelce because that's too recent. So no mention of current events. And even though other AI, generative AIs do, like Bing would take that into account. And then also it doesn't do well with hyper local information. So if you personalize your queries, it will not be able to handle that as well. So those are the main limitations of ChatGPT. And then, so what can faculty then do in terms of assignments and assessments? They can determine what the act of writing, because again, we're dealing with something that's spitting out text, what was crucial for them to learn in the past and reorganize their assignments and assessments to know to just focus on getting that same content and the same skills needed, instead of like exactly what they were doing in the past. And so and as I mentioned, having the students focus less on the grade, but on the learning journey. So what is this addressing? So cheating in assignments was a fear. We've learn that detection tools are not accurate. So lean into using a generative AI and be transparent about the students' usage of it. Make the students do assignments that include recent events or include a personalized thing. So make it a lot more student centered. Include citation requirements. So have them use the generative AI and then make it clear that they have used it. The other fear was critical thinking or faculty as the authority. So have them use the generative AI output and critique it, analyze it, and discuss that. And then in terms of writing skills and the fear of not being able to develop those, they can also have a conversation with ChatGPT and turn that in. So then you're seeing them formulate arguments in response to what ChatGPT is giving them. Okay, so how do you get the most out of ChatGPT? How do you use it effectively? A lot of that depends on prompting. So this is a list of suggestions that you can use, but I just wanted to point out the context area. So if you are crafting a prompt, you want to help out the generative AI by telling it what you want, like who you are. Like, I am an instructional designer that wants to know this. So then that's the request. And then adjust and clarify your initial prompt. And then type of output. Give it to me in a list. Give it to me in a paragraph. Give it to me in eighth grade speak so that it's really clear. So, and then also provide any examples that will give ChatGPT or the generative AI more context. So I found that this acronym has been really helpful in crafting a prompt. And then what is on the horizon for generative AI in academia? So policies and laws and about transparency. On the 6th, Meta announced that they will label everything as generated by AI, combining data sets to add context to the language, and then improvement in just what the output is, and then more awareness and training. Um, There are also some schools that are doing are partnering with companies to have a closed generative AI for their own school. At University of Michigan, they were the first major university to offer, and this is from their website, to offer a custom AI platform for its entire community. And then they have Maisie, which actually is a custom data set of it provides a custom data set to add that context to the generative AI. ASU just partnered with OpenAI. That was announced on January 18th. And I'm going to throw it to Andy to talk about Ohio State University. Andy?
Hello, thank you so much. I always love following up after U of M too. So, but yeah, thanks for having me all. So if it looks like I'm calling in from a phone, it's because I am. I actually am at my poster session that doesn't start till 3. But I just wanted to give you a heads up if that's why you're seeing me in this type of environment. But yeah, so we can go to the next slide here and just kind of talk about some of the experiences that we've had at OSU. So AI instructional design, we've had both instructional designers and faculty use it. As of 2 weeks ago, we are a Microsoft or Office 365 campus. So we have the Copilot AI, or formerly known as Bing, and we use that for faculty and staff. Students don't have access to it yet, but we are able to enter prompts and generate content from it. We've had some folks, come to us and say, hey, can we do learning objectives and that sort of thing? And the answer is sort of, and I think that's going to be a redundant answer for a lot of my interactions with AI. Is it's still in the infancy of a tool phase, not replacement. There's still the need for human intervention, especially when you're tracking things to be measurable in a course. So great for templating, but not for, final publishing. One area that we found for really like all across the board is it's really great for softening feedback. So this is something, with our, incoming faculty and students, even from a customer service standpoint from staff, using that to kind of write emails and review it. It allows, like, when you're giving feedback for grades, papers, that sort of thing. So we've seen it in that space. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so talked a little bit about Copilot, and I think if you click again, I think I had it set up to maybe there it goes. Okay, so this is an example. I just did this last night, but this is something we've kind of been using since we got the approval very recently. We're trying to find ways to leverage Copilot and AI to make things more accessible, particularly digital accessibility. So with this, you see infographics and things like that. I'm in the College of Engineering. Workflows are very, very popular, wireframes, that sort of stuff. And trying to make that accessible with a screen reader is a very manual process. And when you have a PowerPoint with maybe 93 images, it's a very daunting task to ask faculty to remediate their course. So as instructional designers, our job is to help them offload that. If you could click one more time, this will show you the prompts. So what was nice about, or is nice about Copilot, is you can drag and drop these images. So I drag and drop the infographic, and it took about 2 minutes to generate the text. This is a screenshot. Now, I will say, the more complex the infographic, it's going to hit the limitations. So just for funds, I put in like a Crestron wire, like blueprint graph on there, and it was not having a good time with that. It was able to read it, and like I could ask it questions about the image, but it would not annotate it as this. It said it's too complex. So there's still limitations to it. I'm hopeful that down the road, as as we continue working with it, that it will give us a more polished, resource. And this is something that, I was talking to our accessibility coordinator and web team today. Like I said, we're Office 365, and if we could leverage tools like Power Automate to point in accessible documents that need to be remediated into a folder, and have AI actually create accessible, whether it's PDFs or words from that. And then we get into automated process. Again, though, the thing that, they warned me, it was like, you still need human intervention. So the good news is AI is not able to replace our jobs yet. So there's still a lot of manual processes, a lot of proofreading when it comes to using these tools. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to share out. So on more of the creative side, this is a QR code. You don't have to do it now, just if you want to go later. But this is a YouTube link of a student project. So they took branded images and they just kind of fed it through AI. And part of the purpose behind it was we are part of a wellness program at Ohio State, the Buckeye Wellness Innovators. And this was a grant funded project where we purchased a VR headset and we wanted to create our own materials, instead of, paying for software and allowing, students to experiment. So these are some videos where they took prompts and they, inputted things through a program, Colab, to manipulate the image. And then actually one of our AV technicians, I'm very blessed to work with a talented team. Nick Laplezi, he is an ambient music artist. So we actually did a track of ambient music to go over it. And then we have another photographer on our team. So a lot of these resources are all developed in-house, of course, manipulated through AI. So that is something, we've done from just a creative aspect. So there's some potential there. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I thought I had one more, but that's okay. So I will wrap up some of the things I went through. But so we, again, our co-pilot university, we're really looking at digital accessibility. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, and again, that was a student, undergrad student, Mati Dirissa. He's will be with me at this poster presentation shortly. But yeah, it was amazing because I got to just ask him like, hey, I've seen these like YouTube AI artists. Can we do that here? Don't know how to do it, but I'll give you the time and tools. And he was able to work wonders. So if you're more interested in the technical aspects of that, I'm happy to get you in contact with him. I am not great at that. I just have these quirky ideas and I work with really talented people that make them happen. So that I will give back my time to Richard now. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. So hi, everybody. My name is Rick Pierce. I'm an instructional designer, IT nerd, and adjunct faculty at Yavapai College in Northern Arizona. So we're an open enrollment institution in a county that encompasses 8,000 square miles. So a lot of distance ed opportunities for us. But this is an exciting topic for me. So, you hear about it, it's the big buzz, it's coming your way. So there's the angst and the excitement about it. But being a lifelong educator and somebody who has adopted new technologies continuously as a kind of a professional student, I embrace the change and have been interested to see how other faculty members and institutions can leverage the power of this technology. So next slide, please. So, I believe that it's a very powerful tool, right? So right when we started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, there was some buzz in the news about what caused the Civil War, right? So, next slide. So what did cause the Civil War? A presidential candidate will give you a response, right? It might make sense to you. It might not make sense to you. But with the power of generative AI, you can start your own knowledge journey about that topic, right? So, the presidential candidate, I think the cause of the Civil War was how government was going to run, the freedoms, and so on and so forth. Next slide. We'll ask the same question to ChatGPT 3.5. Next slide. And you're going to get a pretty succinct answer that is very different than the previous slide, right? It breaks it down pretty quick, tells you when it happened. It rank orders the causes. Now, again, human intervention is needed. It doesn't mean that you take this to the bank, but it's a decent place to start the conversation. And I think it's a more informative place to start the conversation. So once again, having this tool at your disposal, it cuts through a lot of noise. And one of the projects I've engaged with on the instructional design side here is kind of a reconstructing history. New faculty member, we have a lot of adjuncts. So we inherited a history course that was very writing intensive. Well, he's wanting to get more away from being an English professor and spend more time engaging in the actual historical content. So imagine if you can use the response to your question, the generated response from GAI, as a starting point to explore these topics. So that's a very powerful thing. It doesn't mean you have to accept what it spits out, but let's weigh the value of the answers. So over time, you can see engaging with something is going to refine your ability to ask good questions and to cut through some of the noise, or at least get perspectives other than faculty members. Yeah, was somebody question, comment? We good? Next slide. So again, the role of human intervention. The day after Cecile and I talked about our first conversation, it came out that there was like AI generated naughty pictures of Taylor Swift in the news. And within 24 hours, Donald Trump had self-published a picture of himself, right? So it shows you the role, the use and abuse of this technology and the role of thoughtful human intervention. The technology is powerful, but not necessarily, but it's neutral, right? It's good or bad. Obviously, AI generated pictures of somebody in a compromising position, not good, right? But then again, you've got other users who are self-publishing pictures of themselves where they have 6 fingers. Again, not good. So, like all technologies that come, there's pluses and minuses. You guys know this, but it's our job as instructional designers and technologists, educational technologists, to kind of figure out responsible ways and model best practices. We have a new provost at our institution, so he had to come out with a statement about AI use, this year. So faculty at Yavapai College were given some syllabus statements. One of them is no, you can pick one of the 3 statements for your syllabus regarding this topic. And they range from no AI allowed is option 1, some AI allowed was option 2, and AI allowed in all contexts with the caveat that the faculty member can say no more than X amount of % should be generated by the AI tool. So that's kind of the way the administration at Yavapai College addressed the topic. And again, I've seen some people who are really wanting to embrace it and lean into it. And some people are not using it at all. I teach an online education class for elementary educators, and so one of my assignments is sign up for ChatGPT, ask it some questions, and a little later on in the class, I have them, ask a very specific question, because ultimately, the questions you ask are going to be very reflective of your understanding of a topic. So, not that this is a great question, but just to show pre-service teachers the value of a tool like this, I ask them to have ChatGPT generate a lesson plan using Madeline Hunter's 5-step lesson plan cycle in a specific topic for a specific grade level with the use of technology in it. So when there's that level of specificity involved, that's a powerful thing. So if information is power, I think that responsible use of GAI can be a highly democratizing technology that everybody can benefit from. So I think that's all I got.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think it's a nice segue from you talking about teaching a class to what do students know about GAI? So before I launch into the panel, I just wanted to share some of Northwestern's information. I just saw that Rachel came in, but oops, let me go back really quickly. So what do students know about GAI? Is it all ChatGPT to them? Are they aware of privacy issues? Do they know its limitations and things like hallucinations that we talked about? So there were two surveys at Northwestern University conducted in the fall of 2023. So the purple one was administered by the Associated Student Government, so it's students for students. And then the Canvas survey, so Canvas is our LMS, and so that was administered by the Teaching and Learning Technologies group at Northwestern, which is part of the central IT. So basically, the takeaway from this is over half of the students reported to using GAI at least occasionally or once a week. And so this next question, this captures how students report using generative AI. And the gist of it is students primarily use GAI as a study partner. And then another survey comparison was instructor guidelines. What are students hearing from instructors about how they should use generative AI in the classroom? Most students report that they are mostly provided something. And for the Canvas survey, most students report that they are allowed to use it in their classes. Please note that, because the next one is the faculty response on Canvas and how are you handling generative AI? Note also that this is a very small sample size, only 40 people, but this does point to a gap because 46% are saying they prohibit its use. So what the instructors think that they are communicating about their policies is not necessarily what the students are hearing and reporting. So I just thought that was wonderful data, and I thank Teaching and Learning Technologies for providing it for this. And now we can get into our student panel. So I'd like to welcome 4 students from Northwestern who have taken classes where generative AI was encouraged. And I'm going to just have them each individually introduce themselves and what class they took and how the generative AI was used. And then we'll ask them questions after that. And if you have the audience, if you have a question, feel free and unmute to ask them like while they're still unmuted. So just feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. So first off, then I will have Angel introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Angel. I'm a junior, computer science major. So the course that I took was a CESP course that was called Design of Learning Environments. So in this course, our professor wanted us to interact with some of these generative AI technologies like ChatGPT and others that were used in education or could be potentially used in education to kind of learn about some of the components about them, as well as some of the potential issues that may arise when trying to implement them in a learning environment.
Great, thank you. And then Jana.
Hi, my name is Jana. I'm also a junior and I study computer science and communications. And so the 2 courses I took were artificial intelligence under CS and strategic communication under communications. And for my artificial intelligence class, the professor just gave us the freedom to use ChatGPT when coding. And he even did a little demo in class for how we can engage with ChatGPT. It was more of a side tool that he said we could use. And for strategic communication, we had these practicum hands-on assignments where the professor had us use ChatGPT as well as I think Microsoft Designer which is like an image kind of generation artificial intelligence, and we use that to create social media posts and yeah, marketing materials.
Great, thank you. And Kason. I saw you come in, Kason.
Hello, sorry. Hello, I'm Kason. I'm a sophomore, theater and history major. And this fall I took a course in the philosophy department called Elementary Logic, which the bulk of the course was essentially solving proofs in first order logic. And at the very beginning of the course, our professor stipulated that ChatGPT can solve logic problems at the level that we were expected to do them in the course. And he actually encouraged its usage and said that could be a valuable tool to check your proofs or to see a solution if you couldn't figure it out yourself. But he also stressed that the bulk of the class's grading system would be based on in-class tests, where obviously using ChatGPT would be impossible. And so he sort of explained that the nature of the grading of the course would allow students to use ChatGPT, but if they only use ChatGPT, that it would not be beneficial for them learning the material. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Kason. And last but not least, Nathan.
Hello, everyone. The course that I took was just a Chinese language course and an intermediate level Chinese language course. And not only was the use of generative AI encouraged, it was actually required for the assignment that 50% of our paper of a certain Chinese celebrity would be from ChatGPT, and then the other 50% would be created by us and our partners looking and reading and writing from our own our notes of the class. And I think the goal was to have a standard of formal writing and a sentence structure and grammatical structure from ChatGPT, as well as our own learning progress meshed into one assignment.
Great, thank you. So now that we all have some background in what these students have done, let's ask them some questions. So I figure the easiest way to do this is I will ask the first question on the slide, and then students, as you have an answer, feel free to unmute yourself. And then again, audience, if you have a question for the students, also feel free to unmute yourself. So it'll be hopefully a very controlled, chaotic discussion. So the first question I have is, what guidance did your professors give in how to use the AI? Did they walk you through like signing up for an account? And what did they tell you about its limitations or what it could do or how to effectively to use it?
So for my two classes, neither of the professors provided much guidance. I think they had the assumption that we knew how to use it or we had existing accounts. For my computer science class, there was just like zero guidance at all. Like it wasn't on Canvas as like an instructional resource or anything. But for my communications course, they did give us a list of like possible generative AI websites and like softwares we could use, but there weren't any like guidelines around how we should approach it or how to sign up for that. Yeah.
Do you feel like did you spend a lot of time having to like figure that out though ahead of time then?
Yeah. So I primarily use ChatGPT for both classes, and for that, not so much, just because it was something that was already pretty popular among students and I'd used it before. But for the visual design, like generative AI, Microsoft Designer, I had never used that before, and that took a little bit of time to get used to. But I think nowadays, like generative AI, they're all kind of like similar in their way of like user interface and how they want people to approach them. So it wasn't that difficult to kind of navigate.
Great, thanks, Jana. Anyone else have an answer for guidance?
Yeah, so for my class, for one of the days was mostly just a ChatGPT kind of like work day, where our professor previously to like this day wanted us to kind of learn about maybe some of the biases that may occur within like the responses that ChatGPT gives. And then within that day, he just wanted us to kind of like work with ChatGPT, give it prompts that might necessarily show some of these biases, or try to like fish for them to show that even though a lot of these people kind of take ChatGPT's answers as facts, there may be some biases and maybe in like some issues that are occurring in the real world that may be shown in like the response that's given in ChatGPT.
Great. And did your professors themselves use ChatGPT or another generative AI in the teaching of the class? And did they share that with you in any way? Or were you unaware if they were doing it?
In my class experience, the professor only used the ChatGPT to show us what questions to prompt. Otherwise, they didn't use any GAI.
To your knowledge. I'm sorry, I'm being silly. So about your experiences with using ChatGPT, did you find it helpful in accomplishing the goals of your assignments? I mean, outside of it being required. Um,
I found it helpful in that the bulk of our take-home assignments were completion based, not based on the how correct your answer was. So using ChatGPT wouldn't necessarily get you a better grade on any particular assignment. And because the students were made very aware by the professor and the TAs that you would have to be able to complete proofs in order to, get good grades in the final exam. So, but I found it very useful as a checking tool, and as a tool to review my answers and review my work. However, it wasn't so, didn't find it so adept at explaining to me exactly where I went wrong. So I would have to do some deduction on my own.
I had a quick follow-up for you, Kason, on the whole, you'd said that, right, you could use it outside of class, but then not for assessment in the class. I was wondering about that gap. Did it feel like the assessments in class, did you feel prepared? Or, yeah, I'm just curious about that gap between what you could use outside versus inside class for assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I did feel prepared, but I'll say like that was part of even before ChatGPT existed. It would be possible to use other software that can complete these proofs and like that to get answers for the questions. But again, like the nature of the class, the bulk of the work was practicing the methods that we were taught to solve the logic problems, as opposed to just solving them themselves and like submitting an answer. So I didn't find that the gap in between was different, and as well because a lot of our other smaller quizzes were not just solving the proofs, but explaining certain rules about them or the different methods or the thought processes behind them, which ChatGPT didn't give you by just solving a proof.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This made me think of a question. Did you feel like you learned the subject matter that your professors intended you to learn? Maybe let me rephrase. What do you think your professors wanted your takeaway from these assignments to be? And do you think it was successful when using ChatGPT to attain those learning goals?
I think for my computer science class, my professor is someone who's very passionate about AI and like fully spoke about like wanting students to engage more with it in class. And I think his kind of he talked a lot about his personal opinion in the class. And I think that kind of definitely helped me better understand how we can use it in our daily lives. Like in the beginning, I was a little adverse to using ChatGPT, especially for coding, since that's something you kind of need to like get familiar with on your own. But his thought process was, if it's there and it's a tool that we can use and you can use it in the real life, why not use it in classes? And I thought that was like a very interesting perspective that like now I'm like more open to. And so I definitely used ChatGPT for like some of my coding assignments when I didn't know how to maybe like debug certain things, or I was stuck on certain lines of code, it was like a helpful little push in either like moving me in the right direction or making me realize that what I did was completely wrong. So yeah, it was very helpful for that class and changing my perspective. For the strategic communication class, I think the professor just wanted us to be aware of how people in the industry might be using these tools. But in my personal opinion, I did not find them to be particularly helpful. I feel like the things they generated were very like basic and didn't have that much personality to them. So from that class, I don't think I would be using ChatGPT for anything related to marketing. Yeah.
Okay, so a unique experience is not as as good at handling it. Interesting. Um, so what surprised you about using a generative AI? Like what did you come in knowing about it, and then how did using it surprise you?
So for me, I had kind of like a technical background. Like I said, I'm a computer science major. And so I kind of knew some of the technologies that are needed to kind of like implement some of these things. But in this class, I kind of learned some of the other factors that you may not necessarily be thinking about when you're using these technologies. So like maybe some of the environmental factors, like how much water is used in order to support these systems, or maybe even like the equity, like who actually has access to these systems in the first place, or even the biases and like the data that they're being trained on. And kind of learning that component of these technologies kind of promoted a level of optimistic skepticism when it comes to like actually using them. Because like, yeah, you know that they're helpful, but you also have to realize that there may be some things that you may not consider initially that could lead to further issues down the road that you have to account for when you're actually like building these technologies.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have surprises when using the generative AI? And then this is my final prepared question is, will you continue to use generative AI for your classes in any discipline, not just the one that you took the class in?
I think I'm going to continue using it for my other classes, similar to how other people in the survey mentioned that they do, and just using it as a study partner, using it as like a type of search engine, looking for certain answers and explanations that I might need. In terms of the Chinese language classes that I continue to plan on taking, I think I will probably just use Google Translate or some other kind of translating software, because that was the main purpose of using GAI in that course, and it basically did the same function as a translator and a Google search in one. So I probably won't use it for Chinese.
Great. So did you use it in, sorry, I just had a question. Did you use ChatGPT in the Chinese language, like, or in English and then translate it, or what was your workflow?
I would usually do both. If it was something that I was more comfortable in English asking, I would do that. But usually I found that asking it in Chinese would help me understand the content better and practice forming grammatically correct sentences and writing in Chinese.
Great, thanks. And how about the others? Will you be using it in your classes? I think Jana, you already said like how you would use it.
Yeah, kind of
I
going
think,
like what.
okay. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, kind of going what Janice said. Like, I think most of my use with ChatGPT going further will be mostly like coding related. So like some questions about like debugging or implementing something, because like you kind of learn quickly that some of these classes where you need to like write more or actually understand the text that you're feeding into it, it's really hard to use ChatGPT. So like rather than putting myself in a situation where maybe I try to use it and like I get even more confused, I'd rather just do that stuff on my own.
I'll say that as a humanities and arts major, that moving towards assignments where the assessment of them is subjective and not necessarily, an answer being right or wrong, then I'm a lot more hesitant to use ChatGPT in those circumstances. Like for example, if I'm writing a history paper, I've actually been, seeing some short things that ChatGPT can write and been like somewhat impressed at the level of detail and clarity that it can do in regard to history. But I'm a little bit wary of using it as a tool to write papers because I think it can conflict with my actual understanding of the content and the purpose of writing a paper and doing research. However, I think I will continue to use it as essentially an improved search engine or to help gather data research in preparation for writing stuff.
Would you use it as a way of making an outline to organize your thoughts or anything like that?
Maybe. Yeah, I might use it as an outline tool. But it's a little bit of a like forbidden fruit for me, like a little bit of a temptation to use ChatGPT and then have it, continue to write and complete my entire assignment for me. So for that reason, I might not. But yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that you enjoy the journey of learning.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm studying what I'm studying because I'm interested in learning about it. So yeah.
Amazing. That's great. So we have a few more minutes for questions of our panel. I have one more, but I'll cede the floor if somebody else has one. Okay, I'll just ask my question. Right. So Jana, you had mentioned something about prompts, and if you weren't given any guidance on how to craft a prompt to ask the generative AI, did you feel like you grew it all? You got to learn sort of like the tricks to massaging your prompts in terms of getting answers that you were looking for?
Yeah, totally. So for my communications class, actually, the assignment was specifically us trying different methods and different prompts and seeing what output would have the best like marketing result. And so like my first approach was just like typing out full sentences and just like talking to it like I would talk to a person, but the results weren't great. And then I switched to like a bullet point form. Definitely like spending time with it on my own has been pretty helpful. I know that there are like some like talks or like resources online that teach you how to best use ChatGPT and like how you can optimize like prompts and stuff. But I feel like based on my personal experience, using the actual software and engaging with it and having that kind of like iteration and seeing what works best for me was the most helpful in learning how I want to utilize generative AI for my own purposes.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts on prompts or anything else about your usage of generative AI?
I just want to say thank you because so I'm a learning designer at Northwestern, and I hear a lot from instructors about like students are going to do this or students will think this or whatever. And I really appreciate you all being present and part of the conversation because we really want your voices to be part of this, of what generative AI will look like in higher ed and beyond, because we know that it's going to be part of your lives after Northwestern. So I just want to say thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And I think we are out of time for the panel. One final question, unless if somebody has one, say it now, because okay. Thank you all for showing up. And again, just to reiterate what Rachel said, for being present here and answering our questions and really sort of caring about what the community knows about generative AI. This is going to lead into my weepy thing. When we were planning this, I was saying I always get really teary-eyed when I talk about what is the responsibility of a higher educational institution, and it's yeah, to teach the subject matter, to teach skills that will allow our students to excel in their chosen fields, but it is also to prepare you to be functioning, critical thinking contributors to society. And oh my gosh, I really am tearing up. I'm going to just skip to the next slide because I can't control myself anyway. But then what is the takeaway for ETC membership? So this slide is basically like how faculty will be using it potentially. But really the thing I want to focus on is what is a takeaway for ETC membership is to be an advocate for GAI literacy, use it in your work and be transparent about it, and train your student workers how to use it to create an educated workforce and citizenry. I totally stole that from Rachel last night. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Cecile.
Thanks, Rachel. Um,
Thank you guys. Have a great day. See you later.
thanks, Rick.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.